guys. A little bit of a emergency podcast situation here. Jared Bailey with you as always. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening to the Pump Fake, however you're watching or listening. If you're not already subscribed on YouTube and you're watching on YouTube, please do that. The news of the day that we're going to be focusing on right now is Buffalo Bills linebacker Matt Milano out indefinitely with torn bicep. And this is a guy who was coming off of missing basically all of last year. I mean, he got hurt in London. I believe it was week 5 against the Jaguars is when he went down with season-ending leg injury. And there's been a lot of, unanswered questions about Milano throughout this process of him coming back from the leg injury. And then the news comes out today that he's going to be out indefinitely with the bicep injury. The Bills are hopeful that he'll be back by December. But again, I mean, that's them being hopeful. There's a very good chance that he's gone for the year. And so, just to give you my immediate thoughts, I mean, it sucks. Anytime you have an awesome player like that go down, he was coming off of, missing time last year and trying to get back. And he's an awesome player. One of the very best off-ball linebackers in the game today. And the Bills' best defensive player, bar none. And now Buffalo's faced with a situation that they've become all too familiar with, and that's losing key defensive players. Now, they lost Von Miller in 2022. They lost Tre'Davious White more than once. And now this is the second time they've lost Matt Milano. And hell, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody as well. I mean, they lost Micah Hyde a few years ago for the majority of the year with a neck injury. Jordan Poyer missed time. They've just been dealt such a bad hand when it comes to defensive guys, defensive leaders, their best defensive players getting injured over the past 4 years. And now this is going to put second-year player Dorian Williams in a spot where the Bills are gonna ask him to do more than they originally anticipated. He played in 20% of snaps last year. He played fine in the role that he was in. He had 40 tackles. He played fine. But now they're really going to ask him to put on his big boy pants and take on a much larger role with Milano being out. And luckily, they still have Terrell Bernard, who's fantastic. But in an ideal world, you'd have both of those guys, Milano and Bernard, in the middle of the defense. And this comes in a year, too, where there's a lot of turnover regarding the leadership that they lost on the defensive side of the ball. Because, again, Jordan Poyer's not there anymore. Tre'Davious White's not there anymore. Micah Hyde's not there anymore. And I myself said, the on-field part of, those guys leaving isn't necessarily like ginormous. Now, Poyer has been great for them throughout his time there, but he's also, going into what's likely his final season in the league. Micah Hyde had, been a guy that we already touched on. He's dealt with injuries and whatnot. Tre'Davious White had only played in 14 of the team's previous 34 games. So from an on-field standpoint, you can replace that. But from a veteran leadership standpoint, yeah, that's hard to stomach when all those guys are gone. And now you lose Milano on top of that. And so you're going to be asking a lot of guys like Terrell Bernard to step up, Rasul Douglas to step up and be a veteran leader. Christian Benford, who's only been in the league a few years, is now going to be, expected to be a vocal leader. You're going to be expecting a lot of these other guys to really pick up that load. Now, the next part of this is, what's this do to the Bills' chance of making a run at a Super Bowl? Well, obviously hinders it. Just go back and watch the divisional game against the Chiefs this past January. They had one true stop to the Chiefs offense. And that one stop came at the beginning of the fourth quarter when they forced a punt. That's the only punt they forced all game. And the only other times that they got off the field was when Mecole Hardman fumbled at the 1, or when the Chiefs were running out the clock, just taking a knee to take it to halftime, or running the ball and winning the game. The only other drives that they didn't score on. And in large part, that was because Matt Milano wasn't on the field. Now, they also had other injuries in that game. I don't think Terrell Bernard didn't play in that game either. And that's, very noteworthy as well. But the point being, they couldn't slow down the worst version of the Chiefs offense. And getting Matt Milano back was certainly going to help that. And now, that hinders things a little bit. Because not only do you not have Matt Milano now, you still don't have a guy who is like a proven, legit number one pass rusher. Yeah, Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa likely going to be your top two pass rushers. Neither of them have had breakout 10-sack seasons. Von Miller, you signed Von Miller to be that guy, and for the early portions of 2022, he was that guy. And then he got hurt. I mean, that's another. We didn't even mention Von Miller getting hurt. That's another guy who tore his ACL in 2022, and when he came back in 2023, wasn't nearly the same guy. And so now you're really relying on AJ Epinesa, who has had 2 consecutive years of 6.5 sacks. But respectfully, that's not going to be good enough to be a premier pass rusher in the NFL. You're going to be relying a lot on Greg Rousseau, who has a career high of 8 sacks, which came in 2022. Last year he had 5. That's not going to be good enough to be, a legit top pass rusher in the NFL. Unless Von Miller has some sort of career revitalization this year, that they don't have a legit pass rusher. And so, losing Milano, especially in an era of football where offenses are targeting the middle of the field more and more, if you can have a Fred Warner, a Roquan Smith, or a Matt Milano in the middle of your defense, that helps you out tremendously. So it's going to force teams to attack the boundaries, especially for the Bills, who have 2 good starting corners in Douglas and Benford, and a really good nickel corner in Taron Johnson. That plays right into their hand. But now, if you're the Bills, if you're, opponents of the Bills, and you're looking at that defense, and you don't see 58 in the middle, you're going to feel more confident about, taking your chances and targeting the middle of the field. Again, Terrell Bernard is great. He's a very good linebacker. I think one of the more underrated players in the league, and had a season last year that hadn't been done since 1993. I believe it was Seth Joyner of the Eagles. I could be wrong on who that was, but it was an Eagles linebacker. And so that leaves a big hole in the middle of the defense, but it also leaves a hole in the defense as, an overall unit. Because they already had question marks at arguably the second most position in football, which is pass rusher. And at least when you had those 2 dudes in the middle, and Bernard and Milano, they could kind of, make up for that a little bit. But now, there's a lot of questions that I have about Buffalo. None of it really being on the offensive side of the ball, although there are questions, but I think that Joe Brady's offense is going to be fine. I think they're going to lean into the run game more and be more of an efficient offense rather than just relying on explosive plays on every drive. I think the offense is going to be fine. And anytime you have Josh Allen under center, I'm not going to doubt your offense. But defensively, that's been their biggest issue in the postseason. Every year. Every year, that has been their biggest issue in the postseason. And every game against the Chiefs that they've lost, their defense has not been good. Now, the game against Cincinnati, their pass rush, again, was an issue because they couldn't get home to Joe Burrow against backup offensive linemen. Now, the offense didn't play great as a whole either, but the defense allowed Cincinnati to consistently march down the field, and they couldn't get any pressure. So now what do you do if you're the Bills? You can't stay stagnant. You got to do something. And that doesn't even necessarily mean you got to go out and get an off-ball linebacker, although if you want to do that, then by all means. But pass rush is the biggest thing with the Bills right now that worries me. So if you can go out and start making some calls and see, hey, is so-and-so available? What will it take to get, call the Bengals about Trey Hendrickson. Now, would the Bengals do that because they know that more than likely they're going to have to beat the Bills to get to the Super Bowl? Maybe they don't, but at least make the call. Hell, call the Chargers maybe and say, hey, what do we need to give up to get Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack? I don't think that they would take this call, but call the Raiders. Say, hey, we'll give you our next 2 first-round picks and a few other picks for Max Crosby. What do you say? Now, they would definitely have to move some money around because they only have, I think, like $250,000 in cap space right now. And they would definitely have to, play with the cap and whatnot, restructure some deals to make it work. And again, I don't know if the Raiders would even take that call or even entertain it, but at least make the call. Like, start putting out some feelers and try to get better. Because I can admire, believing in the guys that you brought in. But thus far, Russo and Epinesa have just been serviceable. They are not game-changing pass rushers. And in today's NFL, especially when you're going to be playing Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, more than likely to get to the Super Bowl, you got to be able to get home, but you got to be able to get home with 4. Because Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL against the blitz. And if you're going to send 5, 6 guys, he's going to eat you alive like he always has. And so you got to be able to get home with 4. And the Bills, with this current group of guys, I don't think they can. So, yeah, they need to make a move, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an off-ball linebacker. If anything, I think the more pressing move is pass rusher, even if Milano is healthy. But now with Milano out, I mean, that should kick up the aggression and really make you think about what's next. And again, I don't know what teams are going to be looking to give up pass rushers. And they were never going to be able to get Matt Judon from the Patriots. They weren't going to trade him within the division. But again, Trey Hendrickson already requested a trade from Cincinnati this offseason. And again, I don't know if the Bills would be willing to make that move just because, or the Bengals would be willing to make that move just because, like, I'm sure that they're very aware, like, hey, there's a good chance we're going to have to go through Buffalo to get to a Super Bowl. But again, at least make the call. Make the call. At least see. Hell, they're having joint practices with the Steelers right now. I mean, I'd be surprised if Brandon Beane isn't at least asking Omar Khan, like, hey, what'll it take to get Nick Herbig? Hey, any chance that I could offer you a deal for Alex Highsmith? Something like that. But they can't stay stagnant. At least they shouldn't. Because this defense, like I said, has been consistently their biggest issue when it matters most. Ain't Josh Allen's fault they keep losing to the Chiefs. Josh Allen's consistently put them in position to beat the Chiefs. Josh Allen threw a touchdown to take the lead with 13 seconds left. Josh Allen gave them the lead in the second half, which the defense blew. And Sean McDermott blew because he decided to think that the NFL playoffs were a Disney movie and run a fake punt with Damar Hamlin to try to get a first down when he's got the second best quarterback in the NFL standing on the sideline. Josh Allen also led them down the field to kick a game-tying field goal, which was missed. So not on Josh Allen that they keep losing to Kansas City. He plays his ass off against the Chiefs. And in the playoffs in general, look at his playoff numbers. They are second to only Mahomes since he's entered the league. He's tremendous in the postseason. Doesn't turn the ball over in the postseason. For whatever reason, he flips a switch in the playoffs and just protects the ball and just balls out. And on Josh Allen that they can't seem to thwart the Chiefs. He's done everything in his power to do it. And the Bills' defense has done everything in their power to undo that. And so you got to do something to try to get a pass rusher. Got to do something. And again, I don't know who that may be, but again, I would call the Chargers, see if you can get Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack. I would at least put out a feeler to the Raiders and be like, hey, what would it take to get Max Crosby? And I don't think that the Raiders would be open to doing it, but at least make the call, at least see, put out some feelers. And look, maybe they would be. Maybe there would be a price. And if you're willing to meet that price, then guess what? You got one of the 5 best edge rushers in football, and that makes your defense significantly better. And again, that's very much a hypothetical, but at least put out the feelers, even if you don't think it's going to work. Hell, call Dallas about DeMarcus Lawrence. That's another guy. I mean, he's kind of flown under the radar in terms of guys that need paid by Dallas because everybody's focusing on Dak and CeeDee Lamb. But he needs paid, and he's damn good. Call Dallas. See what you can get. They ain't going to give up Micah Parsons, nor should they. But call about DeMarcus Lawrence and see. With Jerry right now just spewing nonsense, like it appears that he's borderline senile. Maybe the old man will say yes. At least see. That's the first call I'm making. Call Dallas. They're like, Jerry, I'll give you a third, a sixth, and a 2025 fifth for DeMarcus Lawrence. What do you say? That might be an overpay. I'm just kind of spitballing right now. But call and see. Matt Judon went for a third. I'd say that DeMarcus Lawrence's value is somewhere around Matt Judon because they're both a little bit older, but still both productive. How old is DeMarcus Lawrence? I'm just going to look into this now. But DeMarcus Lawrence, he is, drum roll please, he's 32. Okay, so maybe don't give up that much. Point being, though, like call Jerry and say, hey, I'll give you, a fourth this year and a sixth next year for DeMarcus Lawrence. What do you say? It gives you somebody. I really think that is their biggest need right now. And again, losing Milano in the middle of the field stinks, but you still have Terrell Bernard. If you can't get to the quarterback in the playoffs, if you can't get to Patrick Mahomes that's another thing. Can they win regular season games? Absolutely, they're going to win regular season games. And they're going to be in the playoffs. They need to build this team to beat the Chiefs because that is the one thorn in their side that they can't overcome. So I don't care if I'm the Bills. Like, I'm not worried about, week 3 against the Panther or whoever it may be. No, they need to build this team purely to beat the Chiefs. And right now, you don't have a reliable pass rusher that can get home. They had somewhat of one last year with Leonard Floyd, but he's now in San Francisco. And if you can't get home with 4 against Mahomes, he's going to carve you up. And if you try to blitz against him, he's more than likely going to carve you up that way too. He's really good against the blitz. But you have to build this team to beat Kansas City. And right now, they are not built to do that because they cannot get pressure. Josh Allen's going to play great. We know that. He's proven that time and time again against Kansas City. He has played out of his mind in every game against the Chiefs and is constantly let down by his defense. If you want to say the exception of the 2020 AFC Championship game, I'll give that to you. That was the deepest run that they had made. Allen was still a little bit green. But now where years later on, you look at every game since then, he's played phenomenal against Kansas City. And the defense consistently lets him down. Now, they also consistently beat the Chiefs in the regular season, which is cool. But if the Chiefs have shown us anything over the past handful of years, it's that some switch in them flips once they get to the postseason. Mostly because they know they're going to be in the postseason and that their season really begins in January. But they need to construct this roster to beat Kansas City. And right now, look, they've got the corners. Roswell Douglas, Christian Benford are both good. Taron Johnson's a good nickel. It looks like Kyer Elam's finding a spot for himself as like a rotational corner. They got a good player in Terrell Bernard in the middle of the defense. Ed Oliver's a solid defensive tackle. The one spot that I'm like really worried about is edge rusher. Look, AJ Epinesa is solid. I like AJ Epinesa, but has not proven to be a guy that can consistently be, or has not proven to be, somebody who's an elite pass rusher in this league. Can that change? Sure, but is that a chance that the Bills can afford to take this year? Can they afford to bank on Greg Rousseau all of a sudden becoming a 13 sack guy? Can they bank on AJ Epinesa being a 14 sack guy? They need to find a way to get pressure. That's the big thing right now. And I would like to see them get a little bit aggressive in light of losing Matt Milano again and make some sort of move, because I don't think that they can keep digging their feet into the sand and just, putting a Band-Aid on this bullet hole. So call the Chargers. See if you can get Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack. I would lean Joey Bosa. Then again, Khalil Mack seems to stay healthy and Joey Bosa doesn't. So maybe you lean that way. See if you can get DeMarcus Lawrence. See if you can get somebody. Because Josh Allen's going to play well, but that defense has also proven that it'll let him down. So you need to get somebody in there who can get consistent pressure without having to blitz. Because if you can't get pressure with 4 against the Chiefs, all for naught. But it does suck for Matt Milano. Great player. One of the better off-ball linebackers in the NFL, going down again for the second straight year. And again, the Bills are hopeful that they can get him back by December. But even then, if they do get him back by then, he's missing, the first 12, 13 games at least. And if he's back by playoff time, that's great. But it's rough to see him go down like that again. A guy who they were really expecting to kind of, take on a leadership role even more so this year with a bunch of guys departing. And, the fact that he went down last year, there's a lot of questions about how far along he was in his rehab and getting back. And to see him go down like this, yeah, it's pretty rough and it stinks. But we'll see what we can expect from Dorian Williams. He's going to have a much bigger role now in this offense. We'll see if the Bills make some sort of roster move at that position. But they should call around the league and say, hey, let's see if we can upgrade at pass rusher, because that's still our biggest weakness. And we'll see if they do. Again, just a quick emergency podcast about Matt Milano going down with a torn bicep. And it stinks. It stinks a lot. He's a very good player. But I would like to see the Bills get aggressive. Would very much like to see them get aggressive and go out and get somebody. Because that's been their biggest issue. And I don't know if they can afford to bank on, if they are in a situation again this coming January where they're facing the Chiefs, can they really bank on AJ Epinesa and Greg Rousseau becoming big-time pass rushers? And if they don't make a move, we're going to find out throughout the course of the year. But that's a chance I wouldn't want to take. That's nothing against them, but they haven't shown to be anything more than good rotational pass rushers rather than go to, a guy that you can lean on and count on to make a big play and get a sack and a big moment. They kind of had that with Leonard Floyd, but he's gone now. They had that for a minute with Von Miller, but he got hurt and came back last year and was not good. And again, if they want to make a move, they're going to have to, play with the cap a little bit and restructure some deals because they only have about $250,000 in cap space. But it's a move that they need to make. And it's a move that they should have made even when Milano was healthy. Money was difficult and whatnot to get it done. But if you got to restructure some deals, if you got to move some money around to do it, then that's what you got to do. So I might write up something about some guys who they can target. But again, they're holding joint practices with the Bills with the Steelers right now. Maybe Brandon Beane just kind of gives Omar Khan a little bit of a whisper. Hey, what do I got to give you to get? What do I got to give you to get Alex Highsmith or Nick Herbig. What do you say? So we shall see. Hoping for the best, though, for Matt Milano and the Bills, though. Again, great player. Hate to see him go down. Hate to see anybody go down at any time, but especially in training camp before the year even gets started. That's rough, especially for Milano, who dealt with injury last year, only played in 4 complete games before going down in week 5 against the Jaguars in London. And it was very evident that the Bills missed him, and now they're going to miss him till at least December. They're hopeful that he can come back by December. We shall see. And they can count on Terrell Bernard in the middle of the defense, but if they can't get pressure, then I will remain a little bit worried and, on how far that they can go. They're going to be a playoff team again. Make no mistake about it. They've got the second best quarterback in football. They've got an offense that's still going to be good under Joe Brady. And they do have good defensive players that you can win games in the regular season with those players, right? But in the playoffs, this defense has consistently been a problem. In large part because they can't get pressure. So I think that it's time to get a little bit aggressive and try to see if you can get somebody. If you have any suggestions, by the way, in the YouTube comments or Twitter comments, feel free to let it rip. But, like I said, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, DeMarcus Lawrence maybe. You'd be throwing a Hail Mary calling the Raiders and saying, hey, what'll it take to get Max Crosby? They would more than likely, if I had to guess, would say nothing, we're not trading him, which would be the smart thing to say. But Mark Davis has that thing similar to Jerry Jones where he's like, I'll listen to anything. What the hell? What do you give me an offer? So maybe he listened to it. And look, if he listens to it, then go balls to the wall. So I'll give you our next 2 1s, a 2, a 4, whatever you want. Give me Max Crosby. Pretty please. But do something. Put out feelers. Do something to get better because you need to get pressure. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. If you're listening to this as a podcast, leave a nice little review. It would make my little heart grow 3 sizes too big. Whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, leave a little review. Maybe write a little note. I'll read it. Unless it's mean, then I won't because that'll make me sad. But again, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not already subscribed, please do so. Programming update. Greg Rosenthal of NFL Daily will be joining me on Monday. So that'll be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about teams and players that we are both very bullish on. So that will be a good time. So tune in Monday at 2 Eastern on YouTube for me and Greg Rosenthal of NFL Daily. That'll be a good time. And again, if you're not already subscribed, please do so. Leave a comment, review, all that fun stuff wherever you get your podcasts. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, watching, listening, however you're making me part of your day. I appreciate you doing it. See you later on. Have a good day, and we'll talk soon.